Welcome to 10 Seconds to Air. I'm Alita Guillen. Thank you for tuning in today. A quick reminder that I've added video to the podcast, so please go to 10 Seconds to Air on YouTube and click subscribe. It is free and you'll have all the collection of all the podcasts. Also, please share the link with a friend. It helps me out a lot. Okay, on to today's episode. Happiness is at an all-time low across the globe, whether it's the economy, poor health, loneliness, social media, COVID, or a personal loss. Today's podcast is about getting happy even through adversity, because science shows that happiness can be taught and learned. My guest today is Karen Guggenheim. She is the co-founder of the World Happiness Summit, a place where experts bring the latest science in well-being and happiness to the public. Karen knows firsthand how to transform grief and struggle into growth and eventually into happiness. She lost her husband tragically and was faced with the choice of how to live life after trauma. She joins me now to talk about PTG, post-traumatic growth, and how we can all get just a little bit happier, one choice at a time.
Stand by. We're going live. We're going live. 10, 9, going live. 7, 6, 5, going live. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome, Karen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Alita. It's an honor to be here with you today. And thank you for the invitation and allowing me the platform to share my message.
I love it. Anytime you want to talk about happiness, I mean, who doesn't want more happiness, really? And it's really interesting that you're coming from a place of pain that you have turned into happiness and transformed into just growing happier and then spreading this word globally, or spreading this movement globally. What goes through your mind 10 seconds to air or before you have to speak on this topic?
So first of all, a lot of gratitude, a lot of gratitude that I'm able to do that and that I'm in a position to do so. And I also channel a lot of love and hope that this message can reach people and multiply, in that happiness is teachable and learnable if we have the correct definition of what we mean by happiness. So that's what goes on. And how can I say this message in a way that resonates to this particular audience and infuse it with knowledge and with purpose.
Well, let's start by defining happiness then. Let's kick it off there.
Absolutely. So when we talk about happiness, it's really, in the academic sense, subjective well-being, but that's kind of like a term that doesn't have an emotive component into really understanding what it is from the vernacular. You know, you're a communicator. My background was in communications before this. And so words matter, right? And so subjective well-being is not a very personal term. So we use the umbrella term happiness. And looking at happiness from an angle that has a cognitive element and an emotional element. So the emotional is that it feels good. We know that happiness feels good. Mm-hmm. And then the cognitive element has to do with the part that I really love, because it's the part that you can really do something about, right? So you can't really will yourself to be happy. And it's important to note that we're talking about being happier. There's no constant state of happiness or being happy. That's not how we're made, and that's not how life is made. So you mentioned in the introduction, life happens. And so it's about how do we use the cognitive part of happiness, where we can engage in pro-social behaviors, we can engage in working on our relationships, on our physical health, on our finance, on our career, finding purpose, being mindful, living in the present. Those are the parts of happiness that are the ones that we have a choice on, that we can work on. And eventually, by practicing those, you have more moments of positive emotion and in a happier life.
Okay, so it's not possible to be happy all the time. That's really, okay. That takes the pressure off a little bit.
Absolutely.
Let's get to the building blocks of happiness. So the foundation of happiness and how you can build it. We all know that feeling of joy, when you're doing something that makes you happy. But then there are also those moments where maybe you're having a bad day, or sometimes I just wake up in the morning and I'm thinking about something that, needs to be fixed, that I'm not happy about, and then I just go down, as my husband says, that's the rabbit hole. So get to the building blocks of how we can do something about those moments where maybe we're not happy. Like if you're faced with grief or you're faced with something, about pulling yourself up.
So, I've been in this a while, so I've taken these amazing experts that I've had the opportunity to meet and learn from, and all the books that I've read. And we've come up with the ACE model of well-being. So it's about awareness, connection, and experience.
Okay, ACE, A-C-E, awareness.
Yes. Connection and experience. So the very first thing you need is awareness, whether you're happy or you're unhappy. Now, it's very important for me to say here, we're not talking about clinical depression, okay, or pathology, or people that need to go to therapy. This is one, this has helped people in that state, and we've had testimonials about that. But what I'm talking about is the bumps of life that we all have, and so forth. So the very first thing that I believe is very helpful is an awareness, and an awareness of our biology. For example, you talked about the rabbit hole. Our brain has a tendency to ruminate. Now, in the past, it's very helpful because guess what? We don't need happiness for survival, but we need to address negativity and unhappiness to survive. So we're primed to look for that.
Okay, I feel better already.
Yes, we're primed for it, So, for example, like something like really nice happens to you today. Maybe you mentioned, maybe you don't, but like somebody cut you off, or you had a nasty text, and you're going to call everybody and amplify it, right? So,
oh no.
And remember that reality is based on perception. So all of a sudden, maybe there was one thing that happened in 10 amazing other things, but you're going to hone in on that. You're going to talk about that. Your language, your thoughts are going to be entertained there. The great thing is that you can train yourself to purposefully look at the positive. And what I love about that is that it's not putting rose-colored colored glasses. You have to address the issues in your life and the challenges, but it gives you a whole totality of your experience. For example, right now, we're largely okay. I'm seeing where you're sitting, where I'm sitting, like we're okay. But sometimes we're in this state of like anxiety and panic because of the society that we live in and the systems that we engage in that have us on this like hyper, cortisol release, like we're going to get eaten by a tiger when we're okay, right? And so again, super helpful to have that feeling if there is a danger. The problem is that in modern society, that has been overused. And so when it's in a situation that is out of whack, that's when we begin to feel like we don't feel well.
Right.
So, for example, what has helped me is habits. You don't ask yourself, well, do I really want to brush my teeth today? I don't know what the evidence says about brushing the teeth. It's habit. You do it. Okay, you want to have healthy gums, healthy teeth, good breath. I'm going to brush my teeth, right? And so the same thing when you start studying happiness and the evidence behind it and the benefits. I was at a conference last week in Lugano in Italy, and it was amazing because we were talking about loneliness and social connection, right? So you mentioned what is happiness. The greatest thing, the greatest indicator of how happy you are the state of your relationships. So if there's one thing you want to do today that will make you happier is work on your relationships, whether it's at work, whether it's your family, whether it's picking up a coffee and giving a smile and asking somebody, how are you? And if you're down in the dumps, offer help to somebody. And then with awareness, see how you feel from these connections. So the second component is connection. People are so important. I mean, people are so, so important. One of the experts that is a friend of mine, Michael Steger, he was sharing that people are so important to us that it's so hard to even quantify and measure the impact, really. It's like fish in water. It's pervasive. That's how important people are to us, right? And so when you become aware of that, then you're able to do things that put you in that state of mind. Another thing could be like meditation. I'm not good at meditating. I can't sit still to meditate, but I do it through yoga, or I do it through a walk in nature. Evidence shows that being out in nature, something happens to your biology. You don't even have to do anything about it. You just have to go outside or look out the window, literally. But if you've told yourself, I have this assignment, or I am only going to do this, I'm going to skip the meal, because then, of course, you're hungry. So that's not going to help you. The stress is going to, the same place you feel stress is the place in your brain where you learn. So that's going to be occupied by something else. So how are you going to perform better if biologically your brain is not willing to go there? And so, we need to have this awareness, which is very, very simple, but we're dealing with mindsets. So it's challenging to implement.
Okay. So the first step, awareness, knowing what's going on, knowing how you feel, knowing that you want more happiness, knowing that you'd like to turn it up a notch. And then connection is the relationships. And experience, what is experience?
One more thing, the connection is also with the physical environment. So that understanding that, if the environment is not well, that's going to impact you, right? So whether it's a natural environment or a system, toxic workplaces are not going to be, going to be conducive to your well-being. And then experience, a lot of people have what I call libraries in their brain. They have a lot of knowledge. But if you don't practice it, and you don't experience it, it's like if I tell you about a restaurant and all the great food and all the wonderful things, but you have to eat it to understand, what steak tastes like, what salmon tastes like, what a potato tastes like, a banana. So the experience is so, so important, because then you align the concept with the feeling or the emotion. And now about feelings again, awareness, they're data points. That's it.
Right.
Stop judging, like, is it good or is it bad? Or da, da, da. It's, okay, I'm feeling sad. And from Susan David, we know that beautiful, beautiful, beautiful little words. Instead of I am sad, I'm feeling sad. Just saying that, again, words matter. You have distance. It's not your I am. Your I am is I'm a mother, I'm a friend, I'm a wife, I'm an innovator, I'm an artist. It's not I am sad, I'm feeling sad. Because that way you allow the possibility that you can be happy later. And so I think those things are really important.
Yeah. And
to do things habitually that you don't wait to want to do them. So I'm like,
what does that mean?
That means don't wait to be happy to be happy. Go get it.
Okay.
And we talked about, a little bit about, my experience before, the passing of my husband. I was like waiting for happiness it was external. I didn't understand. I didn't feel, I didn't experience that I had something to do in my happiness. It was always like if something else is happening, if, an external reward, whether it's from work or attention from my husband or a trip or something like that. But it was after I went to look for it that I found out that it's not a looking outside, it's a looking within.
So hold there for just 1 second, because you're talking about awareness. So you're having the awareness, you're talking about connections and experience. But those to me feel, other than the awareness, they feel like they're being defined by external things. So when you say about internal, can you dive into that a little bit more about what you mean internally?
Absolutely. So it's your mindset. It's the thoughts that you regularly entertain. It's your values and it's your beliefs. So it's the narrative you tell yourself about yourself. For example, when my husband died, 2 days after he died, I was like, okay, I'm done. I'm, done to life. I've been married half my life. He was my best friend. He was amazing and very nice, everyone. But that's it. And I remembered I had children. So I had to live. And in that moment, I didn't know about the science of happiness or anything like that. But intuitively, I said, okay, I choose happiness. I don't know where that's going to be. And again, I thought I had to go and find it. Right? Because that's what we've been told. Achieve and you will be happy. Achieve. But you think is that, again, because of the adaptability bias, you achieve and then you want something else because that's how we are made.
Yeah.
That's how we're made. It's normal to feel like that. And so if you understand and experience that happiness is within you. So for example, I knew I couldn't feel joy in that moment, but what I did is I connected with purpose and meaning. I could control that. That's something I could do.
How did you do that? What does that look like?
So 4 months after he died, first I said, okay, I'm going to connect with purpose and meaning, and I am going to create a legacy of who he was. And I didn't know what that looked like. And I'm going to make, this is going to be significant. Like what's going to happen is going to be significant. 4 months after he died, I was getting an MBA at Georgetown University because I knew I needed to be with people.
Mm-hmm.
And I needed to be in a different setting. And the other thing is that it's very important, the narratives that you tell yourself, about who you are in your life, right? So I purposefully said, I am not a victim. I'm going to be the hero of my life. Don't know what that looks like either, but I'm going to be a hero. Like it's going to be amazing. Like my life is going to be pink. Okay. That's why our color is pink. But what is really important to know about post-traumatic growth is that you don't bypass the pain.
Yeah, talk about that because you
go through the pain.
Yeah, I want to make sure that people that are listening know that we're not talking about sugarcoating and ignoring pain that has happened.
You can't be happy. You won't. You won't be happier. You won't.
Right.
Because what pushing that and hiding from the emotion and not processing the emotion blocks you off to positive emotions too. You can't, it's one emotional channel. So you can't say like, okay, I'm just not going to feel pain. Happiness goes too. Joy, satisfaction, all of that goes. And so that's why people say sometimes I feel numb because you don't want to feel the feeling.
So did you get to a place, your husband passes, and by the way, we probably should say how he passed. He caught a cold, right?
He caught a cold and he died of the flu. And there were mistakes that the doctors made and, all these things. And eventually you have to arrive in a place of forgiveness, not for the other, but for yourself. Very few things will allow more space in your life for happiness to blossom than forgiveness. I mean, that's fertile ground that you get for yourself and for your loved ones. And it's so misunderstood. And it doesn't mean that what happened was okay.
Right. And it doesn't mean you can change the outcome. So you couldn't bring your husband back or something makes you sad or upsets you. You can't change what has happened in the circumstances. You're talking about accepting it, feeling it, processing it, forgiving yourself.
And letting go.
And sending it down the stream.
Forgiving yourself, forgiving others, and then you let it go. And then it's like, wow, like the most amazing energy for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really amazing.
So you made that decision. You went to business school. You just said, I'm going to dive into this. You had 2 little kids, though. I mean, that's not easy.
I had 2 kids. They weren't so little, but it wasn't easy because they were teenagers. So that was, challenging.
Did you take everyone with you? How did you do that?
No, I commuted back and forth.
Wow. Okay. You must have had a good support system.
I did. I accidentally became happy because and then I noticed that I had strong relationships. I went to learn something new. I had been doing yoga, so I understood the power of the breath. I had taken care of myself physically. I had all these things that I had been practicing. And then I learned that this was what science says that we should be doing so that we can become happier.
And what exactly is that? You said this is what science says that we should be doing. What is that?
Well, working on your relationships.
Okay.
So do you rather hold on to unforgiveness? Do you want to be spiteful? Do you want to be correcting people left and right? Do you want to, talk about your political opinions with your friends and try to convince them or tell them they're wrong? Do you want to hold on to these things or not? Mm-hmm. And so for me, part of the post-traumatic growth one, there's 5 elements. One of the elements is that, it's so fascinating because I didn't know about it until later, but I did notice these things inside me that it gives you a new appreciation for life, right? And so for me, after I was able to survive this, and it was so painful, I can't tell you how painful it was, because as much as the loss is painful for yourself as a mother, to watch pain on your children that you can't do anything about. You can only hold space, and we're used to fixing things, and we're used to,
Right.
This, and here you can't fix it. Like, your kid has to go through it. Like, your kid has to go through the pain, and so that was very, very painful. That was so painful. I mean, when I was with them, I remember I would be like, okay, you're fine, and and allowing them the space, and then, going into the bathroom and crying, because it's like you feel the impotence of, like, being who you are as a mother. Also, when a spouse dies, your identity, it changes immediately. No longer a wife. And what does that look like? No longer, the mother with the father that, that the children have a father.
Right. Right.
I'm a widow. What's that? A single mother, like, immediately. Things that you never imagined, right? And so it was very destabilizing. What happens when you experience loss? And by the way, people can experience this after being in a job for many years, and then all of a sudden there's a downsizing, or they're fired, or they don't fit anymore, and all of a sudden your identity is completely different, or a divorce. So there are many ways that we feel loss, and everybody's grief is different. But for me, what was the way that I was able to get back to life was first making a decision that my husband died and he lived. And I choose to focus on the part that he lived. I choose the love. I choose the humor. I choose, how fortunate I am that he's the father of my children. Like, how amazing is that? And then I also made a decision that he was so cool and wonderful and so full of life and generous that I didn't want his life to be, oh, well, and then he died, and then the whole family went to crap. And, so I wanted it to be like, okay, he died. That's something that occurred. But, like, this person was so amazing that was able that we're able to live the spirit of who he was in the work that I do today. So that's something that brings me a lot of joy.
And that is an incredible awareness, though, because you made those choices intellectually and decided that you wanted to do that, and kind of rewrote your script, or said, this is what I want my script to be. And then you set out to follow it. So it wasn't like you said, I'm not going to feel pain anymore, but I'm not going to, I guess, sit in my pain. But when I'm done with my pain, or however I need to get through this, this is going to be my new script. This is going to be the path that I'm going to follow. So take me through the making that then a reality, because I know that you felt pain. I'm sure you still experience sadness and moments.
100%.
Right. But you now have established the summit, the World Happiness Summit. You've done all these good things. You are now spreading happiness, kindness, well-being, because you now know what it does and how beneficial it is. What is that like? Let's start with the World Happiness Summit. I mean, where did that come from?
Well, it's interesting. You mentioned going through the pain, right? So I'll begin with that. That's the first thing. First a shock. And then it's like putting on your shoes, and now we're going to pain. And by the way, it's okay to feel pain. And you're going to feel it as long as you feel it. Keep moving. Keep moving. Mentally and physically, move. Just move. And that's what I did. I moved. So you're talking, you mentioned that I was traveling back and forth. The motion of moving, the motion of being in a setting where I was me, because that's another thing. when you experience something like this, you feel so foreign because somebody just sees that. Maybe somebody that knows you only sees that, but you're in a new setting. They see you differently. So then I began to see myself differently.
That is really interesting. So putting yourself in different places, experiences, situations, so that they almost help you rewrite your story.
100%. Because it's like Alita the widow or Alita who just came from Miami and is doing an MBA. And why are you doing an MBA? So all of a sudden that began to awaken me in a different reality and see myself in a different way. Right. And so I was at Georgetown, and then I became really, really happy, really, really happy. And I also learned that you can be happy and sad, like it's okay. And the sadness goes away when the sadness goes away. Now, don't play with the hole, right? Don't play with the wound, because that's another thing. Some people are afraid of moving on, as it were, because they're afraid they will forget the person. But what I experienced is that by letting go of the pain, the intense pain, I was able to have a new relationship with him, that he's with me all the time, and I can laugh and I can have this other, and it takes time, by the way, it takes time.
Right.
But that was also quite nice that I was able to experience that. So all these things were happening. And when I graduated, I had a great job on paper, but there was no purpose and meaning. I was like, oh my God, I didn't survive the death of my husband to just do this. And it was very good. And I was going to, lead the office and all these things. And I'm like, I'm dreading, I'm getting in the car and dreading going to work. I can't. And that's another part of post-traumatic growth, that it kind of resets you of things you're willing to do and things that you're not willing to do. Right. So for me, being unhappy and dreading work was not something that I was willing to do. Again, didn't know what would be the change. And so I was working in a communications firm, and there was a group of volunteers who came, and they were talking about the World Happiness Summit. And it was a concept. And I thought, oh, that's nice, and so forth. And then I heard the motto, I choose happiness. And then that hit me home, because I did that. And I saw what that looked like and the trajectory of how that happened. And then I went and I read all the books and educated myself. And 6 weeks afterwards, I decided to leave my job. And I put my time, my talent, and my treasure in creating WAHASU, which is the name of the company. It's the first two letters of the event, World Happiness Summit. That was October 2016. And we had the first summit in March, which was unheard of, because in 5 months, really, we had a global event.
So you said, you heard that and you said, something here is making sense. This is speaking to me.
And I wanted to share it. Like, I wanted as many people as possible to know that they have access to this.
And that speaks to purpose and meaning. You were still seeking the purpose and the meaning. But you mentioned 5 elements in PTG. Or purpose, what are the 5 elements?
So let's see if I remember them. I'm totally jet lagged. Yeah. Disclaimer. But so it's enhanced relationships. Okay. So again, we go back to people, which is really important. It's learning something new, which I also did with getting the MBA. It's having a renewed sense of spirituality, and that doesn't necessarily mean religion. It could be a framework. It could be the way that you see nature, or the way that something greater than yourself looks like. Also, you have a higher sensitivity for people who have experienced pain. And so, to the level that I do this work, like, I want no one to feel pain. Of course, I can't do anything about that. And we all feel pain. But I want as many people as possible to know about this science. And the 5th one, I am drawing a blank.
Okay. So let me ask you this. Where does meaning and purpose fall in? And why is that so important?
So it ties in with the renewed sense of spirituality, right? So in the framework of your life. And so for me, that's where I really connected with service. And and the purpose bit and meaning. Like, meaning is super cool. I did my TED talk about meaning, and how that's the bridge to happiness, because that's really what happened with me. And meaning has three components. It's about significance, coherence, and purpose. And so significance is about, life has to matter, and then coherence is life has to make sense. And then purpose is is the motion, is the movement, is the most visible part of meaning. And that's the goal part. But so all of that is intertwined throughout the post-traumatic growth, because it's, you talk about meaning as well. So sensitivity for people who have had loss or a enhanced relationship with people. So that's also, about significance. Usually significance is about people and concepts that really matter to you.
So the World Happiness Summit, what does that look like?
That's the best, most amazing thing ever. And it's not because it's beyond me. It began as an event and now it's a global movement. I'm still dumbfounded that you can go to this, over 2 days and have a transformational experience and come out a completely different person after it. And I don't know how that happens, but it happens. We gather the world's leading experts in the science of well-being and happiness and the practitioners. So, and they're very charismatic because it's very important that they can communicate their work. Otherwise, people, if it's too scientific, although the work is based on science, if the talk is too scientific, then it's a very difficult thing to connect. So it's all narrative based with science as the backing. And then we have the practitioners who implement it in work or in education and in the community. So you work with a coach throughout the experience, so that you're able to group together in tribes, and so that you get people, they're still friends from the very first summit in 2017. And the idea is, how can you create community and optimize the learning? And there is learning as an individual, for relationships, for education, workplaces. And then we also do a fair bit about efforts to bring this into policy change. So we launched our World Wellbeing Policy Forum at the London School of Economics this March. And it is about getting this into policy, so that we can shift the dialogue away from only having GDP or the growth of a company be the only metric, but how do we bring everything together from an environmental point of view, human sustainability, workplace well-being, the environment, education. We know that the children are struggling. We're having our next summit in Miami in March, and I make a little joke, like we had to interrupt the world tour to come back to the United States because the US fell out of the top 20 in the World Happiness Report for the first time since they've done the rating. And unfortunately, our youth under 30 ranks number 62 in the world. And we're the most developed country, so clearly it's not just growth. There's something that is there, and that is human, that needs to be addressed, and we can do that together now.
Wow, number 62.
Our kids.
Yeah. And that's the future.
We fell out of the top 20 because of the youth.
And so where are you starting with that? And what can the rest of us do?
People's happiness is their own responsibility. And systems have a responsibility not to be obstacles to that happiness. So schools, workplaces, communities, government should not block people's, be obstacles of people's choices towards well-being. And so for kids, through our nonprofit, we are beginning a pilot program to train school principals because it's very important to do this on a top-down and a bottom-up approach. So, for example, the summit is so we can educate people and let them know, why it's important. We have the Como Wellbeing Manifesto, which we launched in Lake Como last year, written by Professor Lord Layard out of London School of Economics, and that looks at and it makes a case for happiness for the individual, for schools, or for education, businesses, and government. And so, but I am a firm believer that we need buy-in from top down, because it's not fair. Can you imagine if you're doing, as an employee or a kid, you're doing all the right things, as it were, and then you get into an environment that's toxic? It's very hard. So it's a responsibility that I think should be shared.
Mm-hmm. Well, I love that. Wow. It's sad to think that the kids are number 62 when there's so much that the U.S. offers. Who's number one?
Lithuania.
Wow. Okay.
The World Happiness Report is really interesting because people are just tied to like the ranking, but then you go into it and look at like why.
Why is that?
Well, there's different point of views on that, and now launching more research to see specifically why. But there is a sense of hope because those countries have, experienced more freedom
Mm-hmm.
in the last few decades, and so there is that sense of opportunity. But in our own country, if you saw last week, the Surgeon General of the United States, who was with us in London, he spoke at the summit. There's a great interview with him on our YouTube channel. And he was also at the Policy Forum. He was talking about how giving kids a phone and access to social media without any control whatsoever, he equated that to driving a car without a seatbelt or red lights. So, and we tend to be a country of a lot of excess, if we're honest. So we want everything, we want it now, and we want a lot of it, right? And I think that we also are not having the correct conversations as to what truly matters. So for me, if our kids, the suicide rate of youth has gone up like incredible in our country. So I think it's something that we should be talking about, and how can we fix it, and not politicize it, like, to take it outside of that and getting people together of different points of view and seeing how we can fix that in a holistic way, and understand also that well-being or happiness in children or in anyone doesn't mean laziness. As a matter of fact, think about it yourself. If you're depressed, you don't want to do anything. You want to stay in bed. You feel good. You're even cleaning things that you can catch yourself like, I've never done this before. Right. It's like, I'm loving cleaning.
Right.
You
have energy. Yeah.
Exactly. So we have this mindset that happiness is lazy or insignificant when it's so significant and so powerful.
Right.
And the impact of social connections and all these wonderful things, on your health, what that looks like for longevity, for decreased dementia, etc. It's like you would drink a pill. If that was a pill, you'd be drinking that pill.
Exactly. Well, as we started off the podcast, when I said, who doesn't want to be happier? Who doesn't want to turn it up just a little bit? On a quick note, I know there's long-term things that we can do, and we're talking about changing policy and all of that. But in the short term, what can each one of us do today that maybe we didn't do yesterday, or that we didn't do before we heard you speak? What can we do today to be just a little bit happier?
Okay, number one, first, you asked me about what to do with the kids. Do yourself. Put the mask on yourself. They copy what you do, not what you say. So make happiness your priority. Make well-being. Let them hear you say forgiveness. Let them see you kindness. Let them hear you talk about positive things, right? And so for yourself, begin to see where you spend your time, where you spend your energy. So maybe jot it down so that you can start to see where your attention is going. And you might be surprised where that is. And make sure that you carve out time to invest in this. For example, I make a commitment not to check my phone after 9 p.m. and in the morning. What happens in the evening and in the morning, your brain is a sponge. It's like, it's going to consume. So there are people that are like, I'm so freaked out with the news. Guess what? Don't
look at it first thing in the morning.
Don't look at it. Yeah. And if you are, do it at midday when your brain is not so susceptible. Have a time, 15 minutes, and maybe that's your anxiety time with the news, and that's it. But be religious about that. Be like very, very, careful about it, because that can interfere with your sleep. Mm-hmm. If you don't sleep well, you're not going to be happy.
Yeah, right.
Music is a great one. So I listen to music every day in the shower. I don't wait to want to listen to music. And frankly, many times I'm like, ugh, but I know that listening to it, something's going to happen in my brain. Again, that bypasses cognition. I don't have to do anything about it. It happens naturally. And so then you're hedging towards feeling better and having a mental capacity to see the problem in a new light, maybe a little bit. And then notice how you feel. Notice if you journal. Notice if you write down about 3 things that went great this week. How do you feel? Do you feel heavy, sad? Do you feel lighter? Do you want to be, more active in your life? Find purpose. Like if you don't know your purpose, understand your values. What's important to you? What's important to you personally and then professionally? It's going to be really hard to be happy if you're not living your purpose or your values. It's very, very hard.
Yeah. Okay. I just want to make sure we notice the book behind you, because that's your new book.
This one is in Italian. It's now in English. It's now in English, Spanish, and Italian.
And the English name is?
Cultivating Happiness.
Cultivating Happiness.
Yes. So it's published by eBerry Penguin House. And it's about post-traumatic growth, and it's about my experience and also tools on how you can implement these small changes. The thing is that small changes over time, huge impact. Like it's so small, the change you have to make. That's what people, but you just have to start. And the issue is that we don't think it will have such a big effect because it's so small. How can smiling, how can saying hello, how can going in nature or listening to music, how is that possibly going to change my life? And it does. But you have to do it over and over again.
Karen, anything I didn't ask you that you want to mention before we say goodbye?
Well, I'd love everyone to come to the summit in Miami Beach in March 15th and 16th. I think is going to be amazing. We're having just amazing speakers. And for anybody that is curious about happiness, your life will never be the same again.
So this is open to everyone. Anyone can come.
Anyone.
Amazing.
We have people from over 65 countries, and we did the numbers. Since the beginning, 990 cities and municipalities have come in person. So that's why it's become a global movement, because people come from all over the world.
Right. Karen Guggenheim, thank you so much for joining me. Thank you for speaking on this, for spreading happiness. If we made 1 or 2 people just a little bit happier today, I feel like we did a lot.
Thank you so much, Alita, and thank you to your audience and for this platform and for being interested. Thank you so much for sharing it to the world.
This podcast is for information only. It is in no way medical advice. As always, consult your doctor for medical advice.